Making of the 40.
In the chill winds of northern Canada, a new car begins its first secret tests. For the once proud Jaguar company, this will be make or break. In 1980, the firm was in deep trouble. Its identity was sunk in the morass of British Leyland. It was losing £50 million a year, and it was turning out shoddy cars. The company should have sunk. Instead, with another £100 million of government money, it set out to build a new car which would restore Jaguar's pride and prestige. This is the story of what happened.
The future is here. The future is now.
This is Coventry a month ago. Jaguar dealers from around the world have their first encounter with the XJ40. 6 years in the making, the brainchild of Chief Executive John Egan.
Jaguar was losing a lot of money. People couldn't quite see how we could keep going long enough to bring out a new car. And also there was a lot of discussion as to what kind of new car we should make. Certainly a lot of the advanced technology people were saying, gosh, there won't be any large cars in the future. Nobody's making cars with big engines. And it seemed at the time really quite a big problem for anybody to invest £100 million plus in a car company that was losing £50 million a year, and also into a technology that had an awful lot of uncertainty about it.
The key was the American market. In Los Angeles, Jaguars were only selling 50 cars a year in 1980. Yet when other UK manufacturers were pulling out of the States, Egan told his dealers he was here to stay.
It was like an evangelist meeting. I'd announced that Jaguar had introduced the round tyre to its North American dealers, and it would raise great cheers, and then the radio aerials that would go up and down, and so on and so forth. And by the time we'd finished, really there was a great deal of energy and noise in the room, and they were cheering, and you'd thought that we'd just launched a new model.
Before any new model could be launched, Egan's first priority was to sort out the reliability problems on his existing range of cars. And it wasn't until late 1982 that the first hand-built prototypes of the XJ40 hit the road, in the utmost secrecy. This is March 1983. At Timmins, Ontario, in the subarctic wastes of northern Canada. The 40s are under a heavy disguise of body masking. Canadian drivers have been hired to work alongside the British engineers who'd built these prototypes. In this business, secrecy is obsessive. The sleek Jaguar lines have had to be hidden under anonymous padding because rival firms also test up here and would love a sight of the new Jaguar. There's a thriving industry in snatched pictures, so the test team are taking something of a risk in allowing us to film the cars without their masking, and certainly in taking the 40s on the Trans-Canada Highway. Jaguar headquarters back at Coventry were not amused. This piece of film of the undisguised cars has had to be locked up in a safe until now. David Lees from Coventry is the engineer running the tests from a support vehicle.
Cat litter to Alicat, do you read over?
Yes, I read you, David.
Yeah, I was wondering if you fancied a bit of lunch soon now.
Sounds good, David, but I've got this squeak from my right rear wheel right now.
I'm not quite sure what it's about.
Okay, I'll perhaps if you could pull over somewhere safely, please, and we'll have a look at it.
Roger.
Jaguars, even prototype Jaguars running in sub-zero temperatures, are not supposed to squeak. Roar possibly, but not squeak. So every single noise, however tiny, is thoroughly investigated.
Had squeaking for the last mile or so, David.
Yeah.
I don't think it's quite the same thing as with the wheel bearing problem we had.
Yeah.
This is what the tests are all about. These cars are entirely new. Not a single nut or bolt is the same as on any previous model, so every component is under the severest scrutiny. Both cars carry a mass of computerized monitoring equipment, and the drivers keep an extensive tape-recorded log of everything that crops up. The fault will be investigated by the backup team at Timmins when the cars return at the end of the day. This kind of intensive testing is new to Jaguar. There will eventually be dozens of cars which will be tested all over the world. On the original XJ6, there were only ever a couple of prototypes. They never left the leafy lanes of Warwickshire, and they certainly never received this kind of rigorous treatment.
We've just come in now and we've cleaned them all down, and we're now going through our standard service schedule and maintenance schedule, which involves the lads working to a standard sheet such that they know exactly what regular maintenance is required, and then based on what the drivers tell me from their tape recorders, I can write them out a rectification list. This is a real test in the environment. We can drive cars in low temperatures, and we can also subject them to the day-to-day conditions of that natural environment. It's something that you just can't do in a very clinical sort of tunnel test. At present we're doing 356 miles a day, and we hope to do something like 21 consecutive days of mileage, which will give us somewhere around 7,500 miles on each vehicle.
It's 6 a.m. and it's rather cold. The temperature is minus 43 degrees centigrade. The cars are left out every night. Everything will now be tested and must work first time. In conditions like these, the engine may run beautifully, but the car can still be completely immobilized because a door lock is jammed or a windscreen wiper frozen. The offending part may have been made and supplied by somebody else, but it is Jaguar that the frozen motorist will curse. In early '83, the theme of the 40 is high-tech, and an ultra-modern saloon mustn't succumb to a cold night.
Okay, Bob. Right.
What? 30 seconds.
Main beam. Yes, front fogs. Okay. Wiper.
Timmins is such an insular town that there's only one restaurant serving lunch. Everybody else goes home. Yet the locals have become so used to strange cars that not a head turns nor an eyebrow is raised as the Jaguars cruise through at the start of another day's trials. At Gaydon in Warwickshire, it's a different story. This is September 1983, almost a year after they started the tests in Canada. This former airfield, used by BL for vehicle testing, is a favourite target for pressmen keen to get first pictures of a new model. Hereabouts, security is a real problem. Prying eyes, not to mention cameras, are not welcome. It'll be a long time before Jaguars want anyone to see this car. Gaydon's value is in the range of facilities it offers. You can try out the toughest road conditions without having to go halfway around the world to find them. And if you want some high-speed work, the motorway track is just next door. And it's a finder out of weaknesses. The Canadian squeak is back, although this is an entirely different car. At Brown's Lane in Coventry, Jaguars have paid the ultimate compliment to one of their German competitors. They've pinched a good idea. It's to build a pilot or prototype assembly line to learn how best to make the car. No one in Britain has done anything like this before.
Right there. It's bloody tight. Yeah?
Every backlight I've done so far, we're getting it tight. We're getting 10 mil down here. And about
that. And I would tell you now that that's as good as any Series 3 you've ever seen. You know. Yeah, to ask a guy to weld in there and get that perfect square, that's perfect square. I know what you're saying. If it calls for something dead square, then somebody's got to go underneath and weld from underneath. You know. Right. Whatever. Which is nearly impossible, but you know, nevertheless, something's got to be done.
It's the end of 1983, and the top men from Jaguar's various plants around the Midlands are meeting weekly on the new assembly line to iron out production problems.
We've got to come up with an engineering situation.
But even in the most sophisticated setup, there's still room for a spot of good old-fashioned British working practice. Even within their own factory, security is tight. There's a private security force, and the 40's production line is a closely restricted area. The combination of the new car and the new technology is providing more than a fair share of headaches for project manager Malcolm Oliver.
All of the time we're looking at every single problem, and we have to treat everyone with the utmost priority. We're having problems in particular with say, the bumper fit, whereby the technique was established that we build the bumpers up off the cars at track side and then offer them as a complete assembly with a very limited number of fixings to retain them. What we have now found is that the guide blocks on the body cannot be assembled properly, and as a result we're having to redesign those. That involves body modifications and new injection mouldings, so a fairly extensive change, which at this stage perhaps might appear to be a very late feature.
Not far from Coventry, the Motor Industry Research Association runs an experimental centre. Any manufacturer can test his cars here on the worst surfaces imaginable or on high-speed circuits. The first Jaguars off the pilot assembly line have come here to take a pounding. It's a furious time for trying out cars and components, because at the end of 1983, everyone at Jaguar is expecting Egan to launch the 40 the following October. Samples of every component which Jaguar buy in are now exhaustively put through their paces before they go anywhere near the new car. If they don't stand up, they go back. It's one of the ways in which Egan has set about restoring Jaguar's tattered reputation for reliability. The 40's new engine makes its first appearance virtually unannounced. It slipped into service via the new XJS Cabriolet. Public Relations Director David Boole.
It gives a good experience of manufacturing the engine in low volumes before we have to take the decision in, say, 12 months' time to press the button and transfer all our six-cylinder production onto this new unit rather than the XK engine. The important thing is to bring the manufacturing of the engine on stream gradually. And we're talking about, what, 30, 40,000 engines a year, so we need to do it gradually and not in one big fell swoop.
It's summer '84, and Jaguar hits the headlines. Its existing models are at last succeeding and selling well. the company is hived off from BL and goes private. The stock exchange launch is a huge success, with the issue heavily oversubscribed. Now relieved of the BL board's constant pressure for a new Jaguar, John Egan sets his own timescale. The 84 launch is postponed, the testing goes on. New trials get underway in the heat and dust of the Australian outback. More than 1 million miles will be covered on these dirt track roads, each car clocking up over 30,000 miles. The engineers at Browns Lane in Coventry have more feedback than they ever dreamed possible. On the other side of the world, just outside Phoenix, Arizona, Jaguars have a secret compound from where they also run hot weather tests. It's June '85, and their program's in full swing, with cars going out onto desert and mountain roads. But the drivers now are the nearest thing one can get to ordinary motorists. None of them are trained mechanics.
Good, Rick.
Margie, for instance, is a local stockbroker's wife who drives for fun.
So far I haven't started the engine yet, though.
Okay, go ahead and get your cars going and get out of here.
While Eugene is a Vietnam veteran, for whom it's all a bit more serious. The temperature is in the upper 80s, and it's only 6 in the morning.
Early morning riser, I can still feel all your sunlight shine before the dawn. First light and morning feelings got me losing so much sleep I just can't say.
It's as different from Timmins, Ontario as you could imagine, but the engineer in charge is still David Leeds.
We've gone to great lengths to try and conceal the details of this motor car's exterior shape, and we're taking every measure that we think is necessary in order to maintain that security. These are pre-production vehicles. They're made by the manufacturing rather than within the experimental. And in many respects, really, from the camouflage all the way down to the tyres, these cars differ totally from the ones that you knew in Timmins in '83.
We've got a cold snap hitting tomorrow. It'll only be about 112 tomorrow, and so you'll have to dress appropriately. But right now it's 90 degrees outside at 9 o'clock. Wow.
The high temperature and thin air make this work crucial if the 40 is to meet the strict US fuel regulations. Jaguar are fined $6 million in 1985 for the thirsty performance of their current models.
How are your gauges reading, Rick?
Gauges are reading good. How about yours?
Yeah, mine are real good. What's your gas holding up?
I could use a little bit, but we're doing all right.
We have two routes that go up into the mountains, one to the northwest, one to the northeast of Phoenix, rising from about 1,450 feet at base to over 7,000 as they crest the mountains.
Check out the view out there to the right, Rick. The dirt, the red dirt, pinky color.
Now we're busy running up the miles on the basis of about 300 miles per car per shift, 2 shifts a day, 5 days a week. So we're looking at, on each car, probably 600 a day, 3,000 a week. Well, during the course of a routine shift, the cars stop 3 times, 2 coffee breaks and the standard half-an-hour lunch break. On all 3 occasions, we've carefully chosen secluded places where we know we can park the cars either around the corner and out of the way of the public's gaze, or in such places as TJ's Cafe, we know we can park the cars outside the window and either the drivers or the owner of the cafe, in fact, can keep an eye on things for us.
KZZP, AM and FM, Mesa, Phoenix.
Your friend in the desert.
Okay, trade weather. Today, sunny and hot and a high near 112. Tonight, fair and warm, lows near 80. And tomorrow, sunny and breezy at times in the afternoon. Continued hot with a high near 110. That's a little cooling trend coming our way.
Migrant worker, maintenance man. When we come to your town, as easy as you can.
while testing the car all around the world, and there's work going on in southern Italy as well, Jaguar are busy doing something equally vital, testing the market. It's October 1985, and this is a car clinic at Düsseldorf in Germany. Clinics are a ritual which all major manufacturers undergo, putting their cars on competitive display for potential customers to pass judgment. These clinics have led Jaguar to a major rethink on the image of the 40. At first it did well against the current Series 3, but as Jaguar has made the existing models more and more luxurious, with lots of wood and leather, the 40 lost its popularity. So it was decided to change its image. Yes, it was still new, but above all, it was a luxury car.
Oh, that's encouraging.
And I remember some of the beautiful words that were used about it. People were asked to put in words what they thought of one of our German competitors, and they said solid and strong and Teutonic. And what did they think about XJ40? And they used words like a swan in flight and like a tiger going through the jungle. So it was very much liked.
In this rather precious atmosphere, more like Cartier's than a car showroom, the good or bad news is delivered by the marketing research executive, David Harding.
I get a grilling. The engineering director, the styling director, I'm standing there as a mouthpiece for the customer, if you like, criticising their work. So I get a grilling, but provided the research holds up and I've done my homework properly, then they take notice.
They're only too pleased to take notice this time because the customer, it seems, likes the 40. Mind you, they still like the Series 3, leaving Jaguar with the kind of dilemma most manufacturers would love. How do you launch a new car when the public can't get enough of the existing models? In America, sales have rocketed from 3,000 in 1980 to 7 times that in 1985. Jaguar shares, already riding high on the US stock market, go even higher when the 40 is shown to their US dealers. Egan's decision to stay in America when the rest of BL pulled out has paid off. Back in England, the decision has been taken. The much-delayed launch is to be at the 1986 Motor Show at the National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham. At nearby Castle Bromwich, production of car bodies is put on to maximum effort. It's now March 1986, and the motor show is 7 months away. A launch committee to coordinate marketing and sales is set up, meeting weekly. They decide that the advertising strategy will play heavily on the luxury image, but it won't be called the XJ40 in public. It will be launched under the familiar names of XJ6, Sovereign and Daimler.
One of the most interesting things that everybody will see coming out of these visuals is that we can now start to see just how good the car can look. It also gives us some lessons on what we don't want to do, because there are some shots, which we'll see as we go through, which just don't work on XJ40, but which are classically, normally good shots on Series 3. And equally, there are some shots which are bad on Series 3, which look absolutely superb on 40.
This is another 3-page ad, this time with a right-hand page teaser. Again, you've seen it before, but it stood up fairly well in the first research, and we're going to progress it through, playing on the brand name, the product name, Sovereign. Today, Britain has a new Sovereign, and that would open up to a double-page spread. The new Sovereign, accepted currency throughout the world.
Again, for those of you who haven't seen this range of advertisements before, just to make it clear that we're not necessarily going to go for any one of these treatments specifically.
Very much the executive sector. Don't tell the chairman what it is, just tell him what it costs. The idea being, if you go into your chairman and you want to buy a new car for £16,000, Now, somebody said the price is not been displayed too well so far. You can't get more balls out than that one. It's obviously XJ6, executive sector. We're saying the power, it plays on emotions to some extent. The ego, I drive a Jaguar, not a Ford, but the price is within my category of my executive status in my company.
The trouble with highly advanced cars is that they still have to be serviced by your local garage. So Jaguars have to train people who then go out to teach the motor mechanics.
50-micron filter inside. They reckon fuel will move around and keep the dirt away from the filter, and the filter should last the lifetime of the car.
And as well as a service manual, there's a computer to help.
We have to consider the dealer's needs for information, for special tools, warranty information, and also because this car is quite complicated, we've seen the need to give him some very specialised computer-based test equipment. That equipment is very new in concept and is quite exciting and gives every dealer in the world a common knowledge level and the same level of expertise, whether he's in Doha, in Bahrain, in Paraguay or in Birmingham, to go up to one of these vehicles and fix the customer's problem quickly, efficiently and scientifically.
Disconnect relay. And probe it again.
The site isn't the problem.
It's the neighbours.
It's where you are in relation to the rest of the show.
If, you know, if they could take
The launch committee has a problem. Armed with an advertising campaign all about power, glory and sovereigns, the car, which has been compared to a swan in flight or a tiger leaping through the jungle, has been placed at the motor show in a hall reserved for light commercial vehicles.
It's great in terms of being close to the entrance and all the rest of it. I've got no problem with any of that, and I don't think I'd have any problem with that position at all if that, let's say, was Volvo and that was Lotus and that was, you know, Rolls-Royce or whoever it was. And the concept of us just being bureaucratically pushed into a convenient corner is not one that appeals to me at all.
After strong representations, they move to a more appropriate setting. But before the public see the cars, the men who have to sell them are wined, dined and given the full £1 million treatment. It's now all down to the marketing men.
Well, this is one of 18 dealer conventions that we're holding, which involves dealers from the UK, the European network, the overseas network and the Americans. We've got the press launches going on in Scotland, and once those are finished we move the entire set from here at Browns Lane and take it to the NEC, where we have a show for 4 days for the entire employees and their families, which is about 40,000 people coming through in 4 days. We then pick it up and move the whole shooting match down to London, to the Hilton, for the City of London launch. So all in all, we'll have about 44,000 people look at the show before the public launch.
But amidst all this euphoria, the crucial questions are still unresolved. Will it sell? They think the engineers have got it right, but was the feedback from all those clinics accurate? At the top end of the car market, it's still difficult to know whether there'll even be a demand for big cars in the 1990s. So will the gamble by Egan, now Sir John, pay off? The customer will decide.
You know, we could have produced something that looked like this 2 years ago, but we couldn't have produced something that works like this.
But at the end of it all, people did have to make an act of faith. To invest £100 million in a company which had just lost £50 million is an act of faith. And I believe that those directors of BL and the decision makers in government did make an act of faith, which I hope we've justified.